Through the day, ladies and gentlemen, national attention was centered around Nandigram, and rightly so. In arguably the biggest political battle seen in recent times, BJP's Shah of elections locked horns with Bengal ki Beti Mamata Banerjee 48 hours before the high-intensity clash slated to go to polls on April 1st. It's all about power, prestige and popularity now. While the BJP's political machinery led by Home Minister Amit Shah put its weight behind Suvendu Adhikari, Mamata Banerjee seems to have put her entire focus on this one constituency of Nandigram. Now, several political observers have raised a pertinent point. Taking off from the points raised by these political pundits, Times Now's number-crunching team put together pure numbers from the cluster that is going to polls in the coming 48 hours, including Nandigram. There are 30 seats that are going to poll, and Mamata Banerjee seems to have put her entire focus on one seat of Nandigram, while other 29 seats too needed her attention possibly. And going by 2016 assembly results, there are at least 6 constituencies which had wafer-thin margins in this particular area. Absolutely wafer-thin, ladies and gentlemen. What we could ask tonight is whether Mamata Banerjee has boxed herself in with this single high-profile battle in Nandigram. Will she pay the price in the other 6 wafer-thin seats, as she has opted to get in a new seat moving to Nandigram this time, and has chosen to spend more time in this constituency rather than concentrating across the state. Here, as the maps illustrate, while there are 6 seats that Trinamool Congress, the Congress and left won by a very, very thin margin, if Didi's march was not restricted to Nandigram, she could have possibly defended these seats better, where the Trinamool had a minuscule margin last time. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, with anti-incumbency staring at her face, she's got 10 years of the Trinamool Congress rule behind her. At this point in time, in the second phase, will Mamata Banerjee be thinking about whether she gave up other seats only for protection of this one seat, which is a prestige battle where Mamata Banerjee, the Chief Minister of West Bengal, is herself fighting from? Is the Nandigram strategy going to backfire? That's the question political pundits are now asking tonight. Before we dive further into this entire strategy, take a look at the final day of campaigning in Nandigram.
The last leg of campaigning is currently on for the second phase of election, where all eyes would be on Nandigram, which is up for a prestige battle. And the Trinamool Congress contesting candidate Mamata Banerjee has taken to the streets as she is in middle of a roadshow.
The march for the biggest Mahabharat of 2021. Mamata Banerjee and a sea of supporters ready to take on the biggest election machinery India has ever seen. On the other side, it was Shah of polls, leading a sea of saffron in Nandigram. Which could very well become the deciding factor as Bengal chooses its political fate. But it was Amit Shah who drew the first blood in a high-intense political campaign.
लगातार हम देख रहे हैं कि ममता बनर्जी को भी एक जय श्री राम के जो स्लोगन्स हैं उनसे इनकाउंटर होना पड़ रहा है। लग रहा है सर वो जो चेंज जो बीजेपी चाहती थी वो कहीं ना कहीं आ गया है।
नहीं, वो तो दिखाई ही पड़ता है
सर। लगातार सर इतनी भीड़ आने की क्या वजह रही सर? क्या वजह रही कि इतना जो चेंज आया एकदम से लोगों में? वो ऐसा
लोग ममता बनर्जी से परेशान हैं। कटमनी, टोलबाजी, हिंसा, घुसपैठ, भ्रष्टाचार, सीए को लागू नहीं होने देना, ये सारी बातों से लोग परेशान हैं।
Mamata, who's trying to project a healing touch in her campaign, is also aware of the mathematics involved in winning elections. Times Now's number crunching team for election doing the simple math. Assuming that Mamata has the complete support of the Muslim community, looking at the number of voters and the amount of Hindu votes she may need to ensure a win, it comes to 31%. Now here's where Mamata has the advantage. In 2019, Trinamool bagged 32% Hindu votes. If this math applies, Mamata is clearly in the driver's seat. Still, she does not want to take any chances and stop the reach out to the Hindus. For the first time, she even reveals her gotra in a public rally.
আমার পরিবার মানুষের পরিবার কিছুক্ষণ আগের মিটিংটায় মন্দিরে গেলাম ঠাকুর মশাই ঠাকুর মন্দিরের ছবি নিয়ে দাঁড়িয়েছিলেন পূজো নিয়ে দাঁড়িয়েছিলেন তো আমাকে জিজ্ঞেস করছিলেন মা তোমার গোত্রটা বলবে আমার মনে পড়ে গেল আমি ত্রিপুরেশ্বরী মন্দিরে পূজো দিতে গিয়েছিলাম সেদিন আমার সাথে যারা ছিলেন তারা জানেন আমাকে জিজ্ঞেস করেছিলেন পুরোহিত মশাই মা তোমার গোত্রটা কি আমি বলে ফেলেছিলাম মামাটি মানুষ গোত্র আজকেও তিনি যখন আমায় জিজ্ঞেস করলেন আমি বললাম দেখুন আমার তো একটা পার্সোনাল গোত্র আছে সেটা সান্ডিল্য কিন্তু আমি মনে করি আমার গোত্র মামাটি মানুষ গোত্র আমার পূজোয় যদি মানুষের ভালো হয় সেই পূজোটাই আমি দিই আমি মামাটি মানুষের পূজো করি
Nandigram is simmering. Tensions are quite palpable. Security personnel are having a tough time to keep supporters of both parties at bay. Clearly, Nandigram is divided like never before.
दीदी काके वोट देबेन दीदी ना दादा
दीदी के
দাদা কে বানাও গদ্দার ও মির্জাফর
ওই মির্জাফরকে আমরা নন্দীগ্রামে দেখতে চাই না
बीजेपी को सपोर्ट करते हैं, क्यों करते हैं?
ये मैं चाह रहा हूँ कि बीजेपी आने से इधर बहुत शिल्प कल कारखाना होगा
नौकरी बढ़नी चाहिए, नौकरी चाकरी जो बोला जाता है वो बढ़नी चाहिए। आप बताइए।
और भी है क्या हम लोग का टीएमसी जो सरकार है वो ज्यादा काटमानी करता है
For Mamata, this is clearly the biggest political challenge of her career. A highly polarized state has now put everything at stake: power, prestige and popularity. Who will clinch Nandigram? The voters will decide in another 48 hours. Bureau Report, Times Now.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's no doubt that in this high-stake battle, Mamata Banerjee would be naturally worried. In just 30 days of her campaign on Nandigram soil, she has on multiple occasions invoked the Hindu card. For a leader who claims confidence of winning with a big margin, why did she have to recite the Chandi part? Why did she have to visit the Kali Mandir after filing her nomination? Why did she have to spend 2 days in Nandigram between the 8th and 10th of March, only making trips to various mandirs, including on one single day 19 mandirs that she went to? When she also went to recite the Durga part on the final day of her campaign, she also revealed that her gotra was a Hindu gotra in a public rally. While we don't deny her right to invoke Hindu gods and play the Hindu card, it's her faith, her religion, and she can profess it wherever she wants to. But in all these years of her political life, she has never used this card before. Why now? Why, after Rahul Gandhi could not get any success after he called out his Dattatreya Gotra card, why is Mamata Banerjee following in his footsteps? And also, I want to reiterate, as I told you at the beginning of the show, has Mamata's strategy of contesting from Nandigram put pressure on herself, as the entire focus of her campaign has just been restricted to Nandigram, and 29 other seats have also been going to polls? The second phase where she may have needed to bolster her own karyakartas. And that brings me to my legitimate question tonight. Is Mamata's Nandigram strategy, is it going to hold back the Trinamool Congress? That's the question and the debate on the other side. Nandigram verdict, that's the hashtag and the debate coming up.
You're watching the News Hour at 9. Debate number 1 on Times Now. Super Prime Time.
And joining me tonight Shatarupa spokesperson of the BJP from Kolkata, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, author, Ratan Sharda, author, Riju Datta, spokesperson of the Trinamool Congress, Dr. Suman Siram, political analyst. But my first question goes to Mr. Sandeep Ghosh, political commentator. And Sandeep Ghosh, I want to ask you, as somebody who's seen Bengal politics closely, I'm just telling you that there are 6 seats out of the 30 that are going to the polls day after tomorrow, where in the last elections of 2016, the parties on the other side, the Trinamool Congress won the Chandipur seat by just about 4.9% vote margin. Pansukra Purba left won by 2.6% margin. Panskura Paschim TMC won by a 1.5% vote margin. Bishnupur, Congress won by a 0.5%. Bankura, again Congress won by a 0.5%. And Barjora, left won by a 0.30% vote difference. I want to ask you, Sandeep Ghosh, she could have easily converted 6 of these seats towards her if she had campaigned in those areas. Do you think she's made Nandigram into a very, very high-risk battle for herself?
Yes, Navika. First of all, you can call me Sandeep. Secondly, it's not just about the 6 seats. I think what Mamata Banerjee has, when she went to Nandigram, she sent out a strong signal that she's taking the battle into Suvendu Adhikari or the BJP's turf. And Nandigram was seeing her, okay, this has become a chief minister's constituency. And that gave her an aura and also put her on a higher pedestal. But I think over the course of 2 weeks since her, filing of her nomination, she has brought herself down to an ordinary candidate who is fighting against Suvendu Adhikari. She's brought her to, she's a general. She should be fighting the war. Instead of she is fighting today just a battle in one constituency of the state. And I think that's where she has frittered away both her goodwill or political capital which she has, and thereafter the points which you are saying. And BJP, in fact, has done just the reverse, Navika, if you notice. Narendra Modi has held 2 rallies or 3 rallies in the Midnapur area. There was Kharagpur, there was Haldia, and there was Kantai. So they have created a surge and a wave in the constituencies surrounding Nandigram, which are definitely going to overflow into Nandigram. Whereas she has been hemmed in, I think, from all sides. Part of it is our own doing by default. She has invested herself too much into this personality fight than she would have. I don't think, in hindsight, she should have just let it go. Okay, let Suvendu Adhikari win. That's one constituency. I've got the whole state for myself. As she says, I'm a candidate in 294 constituencies. But here she has bogged herself down. And apart from the 6, whatever happens on 1st April, that is not going to, the results are not going to be known elsewhere. So the fight will continue in the balance, to 40 or...
Point well made. Let me get in Dr. Anand Ranganathan. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, I want to ask you, when she's looking at the numbers of, the voters in the constituency of Nandigram, when she's looking at the fact that there are 63,000 Muslim voters, but there are almost 1.7 lakh Hindu voters, suddenly she's realized that she shouldn't be possibly taking any chances. She doesn't realize that, people haven't forgotten the fact that Durga Puja immersion was not allowed. She hasn't, nobody will let her forget the fact that there were Muslim clerics who were given stipends, but, the Hindu priests were thought of much later. Instead she comes in with Chandipat, 19 temple visited on one day, and then, she's talking about consolidating her Hindu vote, reciting her Gotra as well on the last day. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, has BJP successfully, contained Mamata Banerjee with this strategy into Nandigram so that the rest of the 29 seats is where they could have a free-for-all?
Good evening, Navika. If you remember 2 weeks ago on your show, I predicted that it might be Owaisi who might disclose his Gotra. But I was wrong. Turns out it is Didi. But you know, to be honest, at one level, Bengal is a jungle now. And the only law of the jungle is survival of the fittest. As simple as that. The other, equally crucial endowment of Darwinian evolution, empathy, is entirely missing. Navika, this is a fight to the finish, and both adversary knows this. In a way, Didi's behavior reminds me of that iconic photo, you know, The Last Stand by the wildlife photographer John Dominus. The issue don't matter anymore. The back is against the wall. Abuses, lies, scaremongering, dog whistling, it's all kosher. Ironic, but if you go back a decade, this is exactly how the communists were behaving against Didi. Yeah. They knew it was their last battle then. She was the David then, and today she is the Goliath. Psychologists call it the oppressor syndrome, you know. You inflict on others what was inflicted on you. It has been the case now for decades that a Bengal politician rides the tail of a tiger. Violence is second nature, unfortunately. And we've seen this in the past few years, how violence has been totally mainstreamed in Bengal. No one even bats an eyelid anymore when you tell them that 34% of seats, an astonishing 20,000 seats, went uncontested in the last Bengal Panchayat elections. No one bats an eyelid when you tell them of the trampling of press freedom, of subservient media in Bengal, of the brutal stomping of freedom of speech and expression, of common citizens, of diktats to universities curbing their freedom, of the sitting chief minister herself ordering her party leaders to return the cut money they have extorted from citizens and businesses, of arrests of doctors who complain about health infrastructure, be it for dengue or COVID, of the political violence and killings. No one bats an eyelid, Navika. It doesn't get mentioned in the reports prepared by those who certify India's democracy. Why? Because everyone has sensed that this is how life in a jungle operates. The laws are different. One just hopes that those traversing through this jungle find a clearing soon. Finally, Navika, just 10 seconds. You want to know the reason why violence continues decade on decade? Because the enablers who mainstream it are never punished. They jump ship. A huge chunk of CPI MLAs switched to TMC a decade ago. So here's a simple question to the BJP. Out of the 294 BJP candidates, how many are ex-TMC? Give me the number.
Well, we'll go to that question, but let me first get in Mr. Riju Datta. Mr. Riju Datta, I want to ask you, as Anand Ranganathan pointed out, it is very clear that issues don't matter. Corruption is not an issue, something that the Trinamool Congress fought for just 10 years ago against the CPM. The bad administration, the lack of development, the issue of corruption, the issue of cut money, the issue of violence, all of that is off the agenda. But what's on agenda? Chandipat, Durga Puja, Gotra, and all we are hearing is Jai Shri Ram, and this is the response coming from Mamata Banerjee. So I have just one poser to you, Riju Datta. The BJP made Jai Shri Ram as a chant in Bengal. Mamata Banerjee is now reacting to that when she is talking about her own Hindu credentials. Isn't this Mamata Banerjee playing to the to the note set by the BJP? She's just part of the philharmonic, the entire concert that we are watching today. Nothing is original of her own anymore. She's not dictating the terms. She's following the bait that has been put out by the BJP. And that in itself, is that the losing of the strategy for the Trinamool Congress?
Navika ji, first of all, from day one when Bengal's campaign has begun by the BJP, Mamata Banerjee has been setting the narrative. From declaring her candidature in Nandigram to her candidate list to everything that has happened in the last few days. And this BJP's and some people who are inclined towards BJP, in their utmost attempt to brand Mamata Banerjee as anti-Hindu, what Mamata Banerjee has done, she has gone rally after rally. She has chanted the Chandipat, the Durga Mantra, and the Kalma in the same breath, affirming God as one. So she has beaten them at their own game. But one particular very important point I want to make here is, if you follow closely the history of Bengal politics, Every party who has ruled Bengal has come from mass movement. The CPI from the Naxalite movement. Mamata Banerjee has come victorious after the land movement of Singur and Nandigram. BJP is the only party in this country who has no mass movement to their name apart from the demolition of a 500-year-old mosque. That is the only mass movement BJP has participated in. And if you talk about narratives, why don't we talk about, Navika ji, I have been on 100 debates on your show. Have we ever had a debate on health, infrastructure? We have mourned about deaths of people in Bengal. Have we celebrated the lives that have got saved because of the Sati card? No, because that is a narrative BJP does not want to follow because they have nothing to show for it.
All right. If the BJP does not follow that, why doesn't Mamata talk about it in her rally speeches? Why is she shying away from it? Ratan Sharda ji, he says the television debates do not argue and debate about health indices. They do not talk about the development indices because the BJP does not want it. I want to ask you, Mr. Ratan Sharda, if Mamata Banerjee was so clear that she had done well on the development fund, she should have stuck to that plan. She should have only spoken about that. Why does Gotra become important? Why does Chandi part become important? Why does Durga part become important? Why does going to 19 temples become important when they were not important over the last 9 years in the rule of the Trinamool Congress in West Bengal? I want to ask you, with opting for Nandigram as her new constituency, has Mamata Banerjee fallen into the BJP's trap? How do you see it?
I will just speak about that. First of all, let me counter what he said about development. In one of the earliest debates on Bengal, I had raised all the statistic reports about how Bengal has lagged behind all these years during Mamata's, including their very famed foreign investments. Instead of promised 15 lakh crore investments, all they got was 15,000 crore investment in 10 years. Just one point. Coming to this particular point of Mamata, I definitely agree that Mamata has fallen into the trap of BJP. She has walked into the trap, I would say. See, she's a fighter. She's a bold fighter. Her first instinct is fight. She fought against CPM, and that habit of fighting isn't gone off. So when Suvendu Adhikari put his papers for Nandigram, Mamata immediately fell for that ground because she wanted to avenge her, junior. Instead of a whole Bengal being battlefield, Bengal has been shrunk into Nandigram. And that is the problem. Her entire game of first talk, she never talked about a confident CM who wants to take back the another term. She was fighting more like a, opponent is challenging the person who is in the field. So you already given up your position as a ruler, and you behave like opposition. You allow violence to go on. You played the sympathy card, you played the Muslim card, then you played the Hindu card. Every kind of card she played, it only showed her desperation. That is the biggest sign that she gave up. And today she has gone to the election commission. Can you imagine why? Because Modi ji went to Bangladesh. Then, if this is not enough, today a BJP worker was hanged again on the tree. The photograph is there on our social media. So none of her, if anybody wants a Hindutva or Hindu feeling, why should go for a B-grade Hindu? Why should they go for a duplicate Hindutva party rather than the original Hindutva party that is BJP has stamped? So this entire game plan she has handed over to BJP. BJP is catching the momentum by not being able to campaign anywhere but Nandigram. She has got herself entrapped. That is clear. And her card of this, I look at these Hindu-Muslim votes, I simply don't like it. I have never in any election analysis talked of caste, religion and all that. But clearly her outside-inside view also has bombed. Bhawanipur has 30% or more of so-called outsiders. Can a supposed challenger to national leader speak like a regional leader like Shiv Sena? She talks of an insider, outsider. It is going to be against her. Bangladesh is the cradle of Indian nationalism. You cannot behave like a small-time regional party in a great state like Bengal. That is where she will find herself lost.
Well, Dr. Suman C. Raman raising his hand. Suman C. Raman, nobody is taking away from the fact that Mamata Banerjee is a great fighter. Single-handedly after she broke away from the Congress party, she set up her own party, she set up her own cadre, she's fought against the left, 34-year-old of the left parties, and then she's come to power and has been in power for over 10 years. But Dr. Sumansi Raman, sometimes when you react in a certain way, when you're not setting the agenda but following an agenda, you tend to give the perception that you're following and you're not the leader, especially a leader who's had 10 years of experience of running Bengal. Is this just a battle on the ground? Because the battle of the mind, somewhere Mamata Banerjee seems to have given up, given the fact that she's playing her Hindu card day in and day out. She's got hemmed in, taking on Suvendu Adhikari, forgetting that 29 other seats in this phase of elections also needed her attention. Has she really lost the battle on the psychological level?
Okay, first, before I get to that, Navika, let me just add one point regarding this, her Gotra and her visiting temples and so on. Now, I don't see why this should be an issue. I mean, if she is a Hindu, she is free to visit temples, and she probably has done it without television coverage in these 10 years as well. Now, I see this, the BJP does not have a patent on temples. It does not have any copyright. I don't know whether Mr. Ratan Sharda plans to get some copyright or patents in that regard so that other party leaders, when Rahul Gandhi goes to the temple, it's big news. When Mamata Banerjee goes to a temple, and they've always been going to temples, but before elections, it gets the full glare of media attention. Never mind that. So she's got every right to go to the temple. Absolutely, she is doing it because the BJP has persistently attempted to paint her as anti-Hindu. Not just now, 2016, 2019, she kept saying during the Lok Sabha election campaign, they are trying to say as if I am not a Hindu, I am a Hindu too, and she went and recited mantras and did all this even in 2019.
Not once.
One second, sir.
Have an objector of going to temple. Did you hear my argument?
I'm talking about. I was referring to religion and all that
very clearly.
Sir, I did not interrupt you. I did not interrupt you.
My name, please. Not in my name.
I did not interrupt you. I did not interrupt.
No, but you made a point. You made a point, Dr. Sumansi Raman, that the BJP is making going to temples as their birthright. The fact is, till this year, 2021 elections, Mamata Banerjee hasn't really made that such a cornerstone of her campaign as well. Why is she making it a cornerstone this time around? The question is very much there. It's the elephant in the room. Can anybody remember? And let me just take a roll call around the panel. Sandeep Ghosh, have you ever seen Mamata Banerjee putting so much emphasis on going to temples, reciting the Chandi part? There have been elections in the past. There has been Lok Sabha elections. There have been assembly elections. She hasn't done it. Is it only this time that she's doing it, or has she always done it? Because everybody on a debate wants to blame the media for everything. Media puts cameras, so therefore it looks like she's going to the temple for the first time.
So, Navika, I don't think she needed to go. Rahul Gandhi had a reason to tell his Gotra and his, Shiv Bhakt, etc., because people had some doubts, so he had to prove something. Nobody doubted Mamata Banerjee's, religion, and those of us in Bengali know what does a Banerjee title do. We also know her Gotra. So the fact that she is making a point on these issues this time does show some degree of defensiveness. And if media...
Dr. Sumansi Raman, this is an unbiased opinion coming from Sandeep Ghosh. He's an author. This is how he's seeing it as a Bengali.
Look, when do I have to show something more visibly to the public? When somebody, my political opponent, is repeatedly saying I am anti-Hindu. When somebody says that, look, you think I'm anti-Hindu, here goes. This is my Gotra, this is the temple that I'm going to, so eat your heart out, I'm a Hindu. That is when people need to show that.
So Shatarupa ji, I want to ask you, Dr. Suman Siraman has proved the point that we have said. Because the BJP said she is anti-Hindu, she got rattled by the charge. Because all this while, she stopped Durga Puja. She did not have to prove her credentials. When she gave, clerics stipends, she did not want to prove her credentials. When, there are so many occasions there that she has shown her inclination to be secular, and therefore secular in this country means towards the minorities, bent towards the minorities. Then at that time she didn't feel like coming out and saying that no, don't misunderstand me because I'm a Hindu, but she has to do it this time. Clearly proves the point, Dr. Suman Siraman, which we started from. Shatarupa ji, isn't the BJP therefore dictating the terms, and hasn't Mamata Banerjee fallen into that trap?
Navika, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's been a pleasure watching you over the years, and I really, really admire you. I mean, you are a very powerful woman. I love the way you speak. This is not to compliment you, but I mean, this is really something that I feel from the heart. Now, I've been hearing, with great amusement, all the people who've been talking about Mamata and her pseudo-Hinduism. And if you think that it's BJP who has laid a trap, all I can say is Bengali there is a saying called Moron Kale Harinam. So all your life, just let me translate it a bit. All your life, you have nothing to do with Hinduism, you have nothing to do with Hari, but when you're about to, end your days, then you call for the deity, call for Hari, Hari come and save me. Mamata is in that kind of a state now. Now, let me clarify a few points before I delve into Mamata's situation now. BJP has never ever claimed that we have a copyright of Hinduism. No, we've never claimed that. We have just said that we are proud Hindus and we are proud to be true Indians. We have also not said that so-and-so is not a true Indian. Now, number two, you were saying a lot of things that Mamata has not allowed. Yes, Mamata has not allowed Durga Puja's Visarjan if it falls on the day of Muharram. My family I come from a family which is a 200-year-old Durga Puja, which has been happening down the ages. For the last 7-8 years, we have been asking the police for permission to beat the dhak. Dhak is a very important musical instrument which is played during the Durga Puja. During Bhashan, during the time when the deity is taken to the Ganga, the dhak and dhol is played with great pomp and splendor. But we have had to seek permission for that. This is a fact. Number three, she has been repeatedly forbidding Saraswati Puja, which is a puja for the goddess of Riju. Keep quiet. Riju, keep quiet. Let me finish.
Riju bolche na didi. Riju bolche na Dr. Raman bolche.
Let me finish. Acha, so sorry. Please let me finish. Saraswati Puja is done by little children who are students. The Saraswati, you know very well, she's the goddess of learning. This woman, the Honorable Chief Minister, has forbidden the Saraswati Puja in schools, insisting that they do Navi Divas. Now, it's all fine being secular. Like you said, in India today, secularism, what we had learned in school, the secularism means there is no official religion. But nowadays, secularism means that you have to be pro-Muslim, and the day you say that I'm a proud Hindu, which I do say, if you look at my Twitter, if you look at my Facebook, everywhere, I have always mentioned that I'm a proud, die-hard Hindu. That does not mean that I'm against anybody. In fact, Hinduism is a completely all-inclusive religion, which I sincerely believe. Now coming back to her 19 temples, her Chandipat, her whatever show that she's doing of Hinduism, this same woman, this Honorable Chief Minister, has been saying very clearly in Bengali that Mushalmanda Amar Dudhel Goru, which means the cow that gives her milk, she is going to definitely take kicks from them also. This is what she has said on
Riju Datta, respond to Shatarupaji. Respond to Shatarupaji, Riju Datta.
You know what is the problem is? Problem is that we as the majorities in this country should be proud that we are the majorities. We have become so insecure that parties like BJP
is that what you're going to say, Riju?
Take that instance to patronize and propagate radicalism. There is a thin line between
Hinduism and party ideology. Do not tell us what we are supposed to do as Hindus.
They are radicals. They are spoiling our future generation.
Don't get into patronizing us. You talk about you've been ruining the fabric. You have been ruining the fabric of Bengal. You've been CPS track. You've been ruining the fabric of Bengal.
We as the majority should be proud, should be secure, and we should
No. This is not right.
Because I am a Hindu, I have to demean Muslims, or I have to carry a certificate from
You are
BJP
the one who keep on fanning Muslims. You are the one who keep on abusing Muslims. Who's going to speak for the Hindus?
Well, Hindus are being called radicals. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, Riju Datta has not said one word about the fact that CAA has not been implemented for one reason and one reason alone, which is that they felt that persecuted Hindus cannot be brought into India. You know, it had nothing to do with the NRC at that point in time. They will not be in favor of NRC because they feel a certain community may be at the receiving end. But they will call Hindus as radicals, never any such words for any other community. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, I want to ask you, you know, isn't this the reason that today they have to go explaining themselves to the people on a defensive note that no, despite opposing CAA and NRC, they are proud Hindus? And will people believe them?
Precisely. You've hit the nail on the head. For 10 years, they forgot the Hindus, and now they're remembering them because they feel that, you know, it probably the 30% Muslim vote is not going to be enough. But, you know, here, if I can ask two questions, one to Shatarupa Di, which is the same old question, Navika, that how many of the ex-TMC members are now given tickets in the BJP out of the 294 candidates?
I'll answer that.
And the second is rather a comment on my... why don't you first answer that, then I'll come to...
I'm running out of time, Shatarupa Ji. A quick answer to Dr. Anand Ranganathan.
Yes, Navika, very clearly, about 8% of the entire candidature, I think, has been from, like they're saying, ex-Trinamool. We don't like to say it's ex-Trinamool. We have always opened our doors and windows and mind and philosophy to whoever wants to come. So yes, we have given about 8% people who are on a winnability load. Let me finish, please. Because let me finish, please. Since you've asked the question,
Don't they get purified, madam?
No, it's not me. It is Dr. Sumantraman.
Don't they get purified,
I'm not interrupting you.
Well, if Mamata Banerjee can be purified, Dr. Suman Siraman, by chanting the Chandi part, the Durga part, and reciting her Gotras, then why bother about purification of anybody else who's moved from Trinamool to BJP? Ladies and gentlemen, you know, I'm not giving out the results. I'm not saying that this is, already result day, and because we are saying that Mamata Banerjee has got hemmed in Nandigram, I'm not saying that she is definitely, not going to make it in the elections from this constituency. But the fact of the matter is, when somebody begins to play defensive, when somebody has to come out and explain themselves and justify something that they've never ever had to do before because they stood for what they believed in, when justifications come, when defensive play comes, many people would see this as the psychological loss of a battle. But yes, there is a war ahead. Maybe the BJP has the advantage of having hemmed in Mamata Banerjee in Nandigram. But will they win the war, not just the battle? That's the big question in the elections of Bengal. Thank you very much to my panelists for joining me on debate number 1. Debate number 2 and the duplicity between the Kerala Congress and the CPM coming up on the other side.